Welcome to another episode of Essentials. In this episode, we will look at the populists within our democratic societies. Populists are clearly on the rise. Trump, Orban, Modi, Wilders, Le Pen, Farage, to name only a few. What should we think about this rise of populists within our democratic societies? American President Abraham Lincoln once defined democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people. But what happens when this ideal is threatened from within? Enter populism, a political approach on the rise globally, where leaders claim to represent the common people against the so-called elite. But could these populist leaders be Trojan horses, hidden threats within our democratic societies? This episode of Essentials aims to unravel how populist leaders can undermine the very democracy they claim to champion. Populism, at its core, is a political approach that appeals to the people and positions itself against the elite. It's a complex concept, but let's break it down. Imagine a charismatic leader who stands tall, promising radical change. They play on people's frustrations, often blaming a perceived elite for society's troubles. This anti-elitist rhetoric is a common thread in populism. The populist leader often paints themselves as the champion of the common man, the one who understands their struggles, and the only one who can bring about the desired change. They promise to restore power to the people, to give them a voice against the so-called elite. But here's the catch. While these leaders ride high on the wave of public sentiment, their actions often tell a different story. They may undermine democratic institutions, consolidate power, and suppress dissent. These leaders often promise to restore power to the people, but do they always deliver on this promise? Picture the Trojan horse, a gift concealing a dangerous threat. In a democracy, populist leaders can play a similar role. They present themselves as the champions of the common people, promising to restore power and rectify injustices. But beneath this appealing facade, there's often a different story unfolding. These leaders may subtly erode democratic institutions, consolidating power and stifling opposition. Just like the Trojan horse, these leaders often pose a threat that is not immediately evident. Let's consider a few examples of populist leaders and their impact on their respective democracies. Viktor Orban of Hungary, Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, and Donald Trump of the United States, each in their own way, have showcased the potential pitfalls of populism. Orban, for instance, has steadily chipped away at Hungary's democratic institutions, eroding the checks and balances that are crucial to a functioning democracy. Similarly, Erdogan has consolidated his power, undermining the independence of Turkey's judiciary and cracking down on free speech. Across the Atlantic, Donald Trump, during his tenure, frequently attacked the media, labeling them the enemy of the people, a classic populist tactic to discredit those who challenge their narrative. Each of these leaders promised to empower the people against the elite. Yet, their actions have often resulted in the weakening of democratic norms and institutions. The erosion of democratic norms under these leaders is a stark reminder of the potential consequences of populism. When populist leaders undermine democratic norms, the very soul of a democracy is at stake. The consequences of populist governance can be dire, often leading to social and political polarization. This division, fueled by heated rhetoric and us versus them mentality, can drive a wedge between different factions of society, creating an environment ripe for discord and instability. Moreover, the weakening of checks and balances is a common fallout of populist rule. Leaders may consolidate power, marginalize opposition, and undermine institutions that hold them accountable, all under the guise of acting in the people's interest. Furthermore, suppression of dissent becomes a norm, stifling the vibrancy of democratic discourse. Free speech, a cornerstone of democracy, comes under threat as populist leaders attempt to silence critics and control narratives. Remember, democracy is not just about elections. It's about maintaining a balance of power, protecting fundamental rights, and ensuring accountability. The very essence of democracy is at stake when these values are compromised. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires active participation and vigilance from its citizens. It's the collective effort of the people that keeps the heart of a democracy beating. Imagine a society where a free press is a beacon of truth, where an independent judiciary upholds justice without prejudice, where an active civil society voices the concerns of the many. This is the lifeline of a thriving democracy. But safeguarding democracy isn't just about these institutions. It's about you. It's about staying informed, keeping abreast of the political climate, questioning the narratives that are served, and most importantly, exercising your right to vote. Believe it or not, every vote echoes in the halls of power. It's a reminder to those in office that they are public servants, accountable to you. So let's not just watch from the sidelines. Let's step up to the plate. Your voice matters. Your vote matters. Democracy thrives when its citizens are engaged, informed, and active. Populist leaders may promise empowerment, but the reality is often far from it. These leaders, cloaked in the guise of serving the masses, may pose a significant risk to the very fabric of our democratic societies. Their rhetoric of quick fixes and standing up against the so-called elites may initially sound appealing. But the Trojan horse metaphor stands as a stark reminder. What seems beneficial often conceals a threat within. Populist governance can lead to a worrisome erosion of democratic norms, a polarization of society, a weakening of checks and balances, and a suppression of dissent. This is why we must remain vigilant, proactive, and informed. We must participate in the democratic process and support institutions that protect our democracy. In the words of former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, democracy does not happen by chance. It must be defended with unwavering commitment. So we have seen how populists work and what they try to do. But we have to remind ourselves as well of the following. If we are true Democrats, we have to accept the outcome of free elections. If large parts of the voters choose a populist, we cannot ignore that or set it aside. That goes completely against our democratic values. Ignoring 30% of the voters' population will make the problem only bigger. So we have to investigate why so many people are sensitive to the populist message. Why do 20–30% of the population vote for a populist? This will be the topic for the next episode of Essentials. So please join me at the next episode.